And when you think about what Tracy put Matt through, luring him into the house, Matthew getting shot as he enters the house, and Tracy and Kevin watching Matt die on the floor, crying out in pain as he bleeds to death, with his children just feet from where he is. And then when she's sure that Matthew's dead, she plants a knife in his hand, and then she calls the police. She lies to them when she said Matt brought a knife into the house. She lies when she said Matt needs an ambulance. And she lies when she says Matt is still breathing.
She was sure he was dead. So she walked over to his body, pressed a knife into his hand, and called the police. Then she told them he had brought the knife himself. Then she told them he needed an ambulance. Then she told them he was still breathing. Matthew Restelli was shot 7 times. He was not still breathing. He had been dying on the floor of that house while his children slept just feet away. And the woman who arranged his killing stood over him and decided that the story needed one more layer, one more lie, one final touch to make a dead man look dangerous. What you are about to watch is what happened when that decision came back to face her in open court. And the way it came back? Through her own internet search history, read aloud by a judge with 12 years on the bench, who called this one of the most senseless crimes he had ever seen.
Your actions essentially left your grandchildren as orphans, 2 of your grandchildren as orphans, 2 very young children who are now 5 and 8, who lost their father based upon what I can only find as one of the most senseless crimes I've ever seen in the over 30 years I've been a member of the Utah State Bar and the 12 years I've been a judge. Not only will these children never see their father again, they'll never see their mother again. And that is rightfully so as it pertains to the mother who participated in this plot. You have sentenced your grandchildren and Lucas and Matt's brothers and mother to living a life without their father, their brother, their son. You've sentenced your grandchildren to knowing that their grandmother, their mother, and their uncle deliberately plotted to and successfully killed their father. The negative impact on their lives cannot be overstated.
Is something that no scriptwriter could have constructed more precisely. This is the sentencing of Tracy Grist, and it did not go the way her defense attorney hoped. To understand the weight of what unfolded in that Utah courtroom, you need to understand the architecture of this crime, because it was not a crime of passion. It was not spontaneous. It was not a moment of terrible judgment that got out of hand. It was planned, researched, rehearsed. Matthew Restelli was married to Catherine, Tracy Grist's daughter. The marriage was troubled. Catherine wanted out. But returning to California meant returning to California's divorce courts, with custody proceedings, legal scrutiny, financial accountability. That, according to the prosecution, was apparently something that the Grist family found unacceptable. Not inconvenient, unacceptable enough to eliminate. On July 12, 2024, Matthew drove to American Fork, Utah. He believed he was going to pick up his wife and children. He spoke to Catherine on the phone shortly before he arrived. She told him she loved him. He said he loved her too. He drove to his execution. Inside that house waited Tracy Grist, her son Kevin, and a plan that multiple family members had been drawn into. Kevin shot Matthew as he entered. 7 shots, mostly in the back. Matthew fell and bled out.
All right, I've got some notes that I want to go through, everybody. I appreciate the eloquent statements from Mr. Restelli's brother and mother. The question before the court is not whether I should sentence you, Ms. Grist, to prison, but whether I should run all or a portion of your charges consecutively or concurrently. Under Utah Code Section 76-3-401, I need to consider several factors when I make that decision. These factors would include, have you been found guilty of more than one felony offense? The answer to that is yes, you're convicted of 5 felonies. I need to look at the gravity and the circumstances of the offenses you were convicted of. In considering this factor, the evidence clearly established, as the jury found, that you were the mastermind behind a plot to kill your son-in-law simply because your daughter did not want to return to California for divorce proceedings.
The defense attorney, identified in the transcript as Mr. Facemeyer, argued for concurrent sentences. That is a term worth understanding because it is the single most important strategic concept at a sentencing hearing. When sentences run concurrently, they overlap. A person serves all their sentences at the same time, meaning the longest single sentence effectively becomes the total time served. When sentences run consecutively, each sentence begins only after the previous one ends, stacking the time into a number that can exceed a natural lifespan. The defense wanted concurrent, the prosecution wanted consecutive, and the defense had one primary argument to lean on. Tracy Grist was 61 years old. The sentencing matrix, which is essentially a structured grid that Utah courts use to calculate a recommended sentence based on offense severity and criminal history, placed Tracy at 252 months. That is 21 years. Mr. Facemeyer asked the court to honor that matrix, run everything concurrently, and factor in his client's age. What he did not address, and what the judge clearly noticed, was what Tracy Grist had written in her pre-sentence report. A pre-sentence report is a document prepared before sentencing that captures the defendant's background, criminal history, and, critically, their own account of the offense. Judges read these reports carefully. They look for remorse, acceptance of responsibility, and some indication of whether the person before them understands what they have done. Tracy Grist denied her role in the murder. In a document submitted to the judge who would determine whether she ever saw freedom again, she denied being the mastermind of a plot that her own daughter had pleaded guilty to, that her own son had been convicted for, and that a jury of her peers had just found her responsible for orchestrating her affiliation. She denied it. And Judge Griffin was
Catherine, Tracy's daughter, pled guilty to murder and testified against you, Tracy, and Kevin. Kevin, Tracy's son, was convicted of murder. And today, Tracy Grist stands before this court convicted of murder. 3 convictions.
A judge does not read that as innocence. A judge reads that as someone still running the same operation they ran when they told police that a dead man was still breathing. Ask yourself this: if you had genuinely made a catastrophic mistake and wanted any chance at rehabilitation, would denial be your strategy? Before the judge spoke, the court heard from the family. Jonathan Mark Restelli, who goes by Mark, the youngest of 3 brothers, standing in a courtroom for the 3rd time.
Today is the 3rd time I stand before this court to deliver a victim's impact statement for my brother, Matthew Restelli. Just like the first 2 times, I don't want to be here, but I have to be, because Matt no longer has a voice. It was permanently silenced. At Catherine's sentencing, I talked about the Black Widow that trapped my brother in a web of lies and abuse. The Black Widow that slowly injected venom and devoured my brother. At Kevin's sentencing, I talked about brotherhood and betrayal. Matt welcomed Kevin into his family as a brother, and Kevin repaid that trust by shooting him in the back. Today, I want to talk about the source, the root of the poisonous tree, the literal elephant in the room.
To speak for a brother who no longer could, delivered something that transcended a victim impact statement. A victim impact statement, for those unfamiliar with the term, is a formal opportunity for crime victims or their representatives to address the court before sentencing, describing the personal consequences of the crime, and, if they choose, to recommend a sentence. Mark Restelli had stood in this courtroom twice before, once at Catherine's sentencing, once at Kevin's. Each time, he had given his brother a different title: the Black Widow, the betrayal of brotherhood. This time, he said, he wanted to talk about the source, the root of the poisonous tree. He spoke about Matt, the mechanic, the father, The man who showed up when people needed him. The man who was loyal to a fault.
The Matt I knew wasn't that man. The Matt I knew was kind and loving. Matt loved to build. Matt loved to create. Matt loved the mountains. Matt loved fishing. Matt loved off-roading. He loved fixing things. If something was broken, he found a way to make it work. If someone needed help, he showed up. He was an excellent mechanic with a mind that could solve almost any problem. He was the kind of father that wanted to teach his children everything he knew. The kind of son who was there for his family, especially his mom. The kind of friend who would drop everything if you needed him. Above all else, Matt was loyal. He was loyal to his family. He was loyal to his wife, Catherine, even after she cheated on him several times. He was loyal to the people he loved. Maybe that was Matt's greatest flaw. He believed people when they told him they loved him. He believed Catherine on the final phone call when she said, "I love you too," as he unknowingly drove to his execution, orchestrated by you, Tracy Grist. He believed family meant something. He believed loyalty would be returned with loyalty. He believed the people closest to him would protect him, just as he protected them. Unfortunately, he was wrong.
He said that Matt's loyalty may have been his greatest flaw. That Matt believed Catherine when she said she loved him on that final phone call and drove toward a house where people who claimed to love him were waiting to kill him.
He believed people when they told him they loved him. He believed Catherine on the final phone call when she said, "I love you too," as he unknowingly drove to his execution, orchestrated by you, Tracy Grist. He believed family meant something. He believed loyalty would be returned with loyalty. He believed the people closest to him would protect him, just as he protected them.
He read from messages written by Tracy's own daughter, Taryn, a daughter who had not been charged, who was not in prison, who texted the victim's family the same night the verdict came back.
By Tara, and this just happened recently, that you lied on the witness stand profusely, and that you, Tracy, tried to throw blame anywhere she thought it would stick. Tara continues to share via text hours, just hours after we returned from your trial, and she said about you, "Justice finally caught up with Tracy, and she's getting what she deserves." These are the text statements to myself and Mark from your daughter, Tara Lynn.
And wrote that justice had finally caught up with Tracy, and she was getting what she deserved. He read Taryn's written words addressed to her own mother.
Now that it's all in the open, I'm going to read some direct quotes from your daughter, Tara Lynn, in a message she wrote to you. She wrote, "You planned somebody's murder. Katie and Kevin would have never come up with this on their own." She wrote, "You've used and abused almost every single person you've known." And perhaps the line that struck me the most, she wrote, "I thought we were safe because we are your kids. I am so sad that I was..."
You planned somebody's murder. Katie and Kevin would never have come up with this on their own. You've used and abused almost every single person you've known. And then, the line that landed heaviest.
That I was wrong. Those are not my words. Those are your daughter Tara Lynn's words. Now she sees exactly what Matt saw for years.
I thought we were safe because we are your kids. I am so sad that I was wrong. Those were not the words of a prosecution witness. Those were the words of a daughter, written to her mother, hours after a jury confirmed what the daughter had apparently always suspected. This is where this case becomes something beyond a legal proceeding. This is a story about what happens when a person spends a lifetime treating everyone around them as a resource to be used, a tool to be deployed, a problem to be managed, until eventually the tools push back. Until eventually the very children who were supposed to be protected by the lie become the ones documenting it in real time. Now we arrive at the moment this entire hearing had been building toward. Judge Roger Griffin had been on the Utah State Bar for over 30 years. He had been a judge for 12. He had read the pre-sentence report. He had heard the victim impact statements. He had listened to the defense ask for concurrent sentences and the prosecution ask for consecutive ones.
Further, the gravity of your actions cannot be overstated. You were clearly the mastermind in a plot that led to your son-in-law's death, a man who simply thought he was coming to Utah to pick up his wife and children. Aggravating his senseless death was the plot you helped develop to try and make it appear that he was dangerous. He wasn't dangerous. It was your daughter that was convicted of domestic violence, not him. You helped develop a plan with a weapon, and that weapon was not just the firearm that you owned, the 6-hour P365, but a knife that you had apparently taken from a friend of yours in California and brought to Utah to use in a senseless murder.
It was brought deliberately, taken from someone in California, transported across state lines, and placed in a dead man's hand. He noted that Tracy had 9 prior convictions. 9.
Your pre-sentence report shows you have 9 prior convictions. They clearly show you're someone who's experienced with the criminal justice system.
That she was, in his words, someone experienced with the criminal justice system. He said her danger to the community exceeded any rehabilitative need available to her.
Your pre-sentence report shows you have 9 prior convictions. They clearly show you're someone who's experienced with the criminal justice system.
He said that if she was willing to arrange a murder because her daughter did not want to deal with California divorce proceedings, he had grave concerns about what she might do to witnesses, to family members, to anyone who had crossed her if she were ever released. He said he was especially troubled by her denial. Then he sentenced her. Maximum on every count. Consecutive.
When I consider your rehabilitative needs, I find that your danger to the community exceeds any rehabilitative needs that may be available. In this court's view, if you're so callous and uncaring as to plot the death of your son-in-law simply because your daughter did not want apparently to deal with the divorce courts in California, the court has grave concerns that if you were ever released back into the community, that you would take similar actions against those who testified against you in trial, or other family members or members of our community for equally baseless reasons that they simply crossed you. Put another way, in the court's view, you're incredibly dangerous, and your character and actions show that any rehabilitative needs are overcome by your willingness to kill simply for you or your children's convenience.
Count 1, criminal conspiracy, 1 to 15 years. Count 2, murder, 15 years to life. Count 3, obstruction of justice, 1 to 15 years. Count 4, domestic violence in the presence of a child, 0 to 5 years. Count 5, same charge, second count, 0 to 5 years. Every sentence to begin only after the one before it ends. He waived the fine because he said he fully anticipated that she would never be released.
With all these factors and the evidence of what occurred in this case, I find it appropriate that the appropriate sentence to impose is the maximum sentence that I am allowed by law for each count. Therefore, for count 1, criminal conspiracy, a second-degree felony, I sentence you to 1 to 15 years in Utah State Prison. For count 2, murder, a first-degree felony, I sentence you to the maximum term that I am allowed to impose by law of 15 years to life. For count 3, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony, I once again sentence you to the maximum term I'm allowed to impose by law of 1 to 15 years in prison. For count 4, domestic violence in the presence of a child, the maximum term that I can sentence you to is 0 to 5 years, and I do that. For count 5, domestic violence in the presence of a child, once again, a second count for that, I order you to serve 0 to 5 years in the Utah State Prison. Based upon the factors that I have briefly gone over and the factors that I have read and heard in the victim impact statements, they clearly overcome any letters that I've received and read on your behalf. And I find that it is appropriate that each and every count shall run consecutive to each other.
From prison while she was alive, he issued a protective order, no contact with her grandchildren.
I waive the fine as I fully anticipate that you will never be released from prison while you are alive. However, I am imposing a $53 court security fee for each count as required by statute. You'll have to pay that off through your prison commissary or your prison fund benefits.
The children whose father she murdered, the children who were 5 and 8 years old and sleeping nearby when it happened, the children who are now being raised by their Uncle Mark and his wife Kelly.
Additional sentencing orders. I'm issuing a continuous protective order. You're to have absolutely no contact, directly or indirectly, with your grandchildren.
Who took Cheyenne to the father-daughter dance last year.
That's right, Tracy. They know. They found out at school. Other kids talking about what Kevin did, saying things no child should ever have to hear about their father, about how Kevin shot him. When they came home confused and trying to make sense of it, I remember Cheyenne saying, "Kevin, I only know Uncle Kevin, and he would never hurt my dad." After hearing that, I had to tell them the truth, that Kevin shot their father in the back and killed him, and that their grandmother, Tracy, was the one who planned it all. They are 5 and 8 years old. You stole a lifetime of memories from them and placed a scarlet letter on their...
And the year before, and have already signed her up for the next one. And then Judge Griffin did something that goes beyond a sentence. He instructed that the court's sentencing minutes sent to the state parole board should include his personal recommendation that Tracy Grist never be considered for parole. He cannot make that decision. In Utah, the parole board holds that authority, which is why these are called indeterminate sentences, meaning the range is set but the release date is determined later by the board. But a judge's formal recommendation carries weight, and this judge made his recommendation in writing, for the record, and stated it plainly. She should never come back.
Last year, I took Cheyenne to the father-daughter dance. I took her again this year. I'll take her next year and the year after that. Someday, I'll be the one that walks her down the aisle and teaches her to love and care for her husband, unlike her arachnid mother and her demon grandmother. But every one of those moments that I step in for should belong to Matt. You stole that from Matt, Cheyenne, Steele, Lucas, and countless others. No matter how much Kelly and I give these kids, we cannot give